Good afternoon, I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Now the major stories making headlines today. US President Donald Trump considers pausing his auto tariffs, plans to impose tax hikes on foreign-made semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. New Russian strikes hit Ukraine's Sumy as the city mourns the victims of the previous deadly attack. Deepening economic ties and facilitating trade, the main aim of the International Conference of Leading Think Tanks of the Organization of Turkic States in Uzbekistan. There's more US tariffs on the way. President Donald Trump is pressing forward with plans to impose tax hikes on foreign-made semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. Washington says it's part of a broader strategy to reshape American trade priorities.
Semiconductors and pharmaceuticals are the next products to have increased US tariffs imposed on them. President Donald Trump says it's part of a broader economic strategy to reshape US trade priorities. The increases are designed to stimulate domestic manufacturing.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs.
Earlier in week, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that smartphones, computers, and some other electronics will come under separate tariffs, saying all these sectors are critical to American security. And now the list includes pharmaceuticals and semiconductors.
So all those products are going to come under semiconductors, and they're going to have a special focused type of tariff to make sure that those products get reshored. We need to have semiconductors, we need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon.
Meanwhile, Trump says he's contemplating a temporary pause on tariffs affecting the auto industry, which was a 25% duty introduced earlier this year. Trump's decision signals a more cautious stance as the administration strives to balance and reinforce key sectors while mitigating negative impacts on the auto industry. The US is now preparing to impose these new trade restrictions on high-tech and health sectors, while the auto sector awaits further clarity on the future of its tariffs.
Chinese President Xi Jinping called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by US tariffs. Xi kicked off his Southeast Asian tour in Hanoi, where dozens of agreements were signed. He's set to continue his trip this week by visiting Malaysia and Cambodia.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has begun a high-stakes diplomatic tour in Vietnam, aiming to secure new trade footholds amid mounting tariff tensions with the United States. Xi's arrival in Hanoi marks the first leg of a Southeast Asia trip that includes Malaysia and Cambodia, countries that, like China, are under growing pressure from Washington's protectionist trade stance. Beijing is now grappling with a 145% tariff hike from the US, while Vietnam is negotiating to reduce a looming 46% tariff on its own exports. With supply chains in flux, Xi is seeking deeper regional alliances, and Vietnam is key. On Monday, the two nations signed dozens of cooperation agreements covering production, supply chains, and rail infrastructure. While the deals reflect strategic alignment, financial specifics remain vague. Vietnam, a major export hub to the US, is walking a tightrope, tightening trade controls with China to avoid accusations of tariff circumvention, while also maintaining close economic ties with Beijing. Amid all this, China is pushing for greater acceptance of its domestic aircraft. Vietjet has signed a memorandum with China's COMAC to potentially lease C909 planes, an effort to break into foreign markets. Despite these efforts to deepen ties, challenges persist. Vietnam has recently imposed anti-dumping duties, measures used to protect local industries from unfairly cheap imports on several Chinese steel products. It has also ended a tax waiver on low-value parcels to curb the flow of cheap Chinese goods. Xi's visits to Malaysia and Cambodia later this week will continue China's push to expand regional trade partnerships amid shifting global dynamics.
US President Donald Trump says he believes Iran is intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States. He says Tehran must abandon any drive for a nuclear weapon or face a possible military strike on atomic facilities. However, the White House has described the talks as positive and constructive. The next meeting is scheduled for Saturday in Rome. Sources familiar with the discussions say this round will aim to establish a general framework for a possible agreement. The last direct negotiations between the two countries took place during former President Obama's term. Trump later withdrew the US from the 2015 nuclear deal.
Let us never negotiate.
I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it for the world.
Earlier, my colleague Andy Mioch discussed the upcoming talks in Rome with former Pentagon intelligence analyst Michael Pregent. He believes that the US should be thinking differently in handling Iran's demands for lifting sanctions.
Well, if I was advising the Trump administration, I would remind them that Europe remained in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Europe remained in the Iran deal while Iran was cheating. And at no time did Europe put sanctions on Iran. And at no time did Russia or China put sanctions on Iran for violating the JCPOA that they were still in. So there should be no guarantees for sanctions being lifted. And the first question to Iran would be, or the first demand should be, release all the hostages, tell Hamas, your proxy, to release all the hostages before we even sit down to talk. Unfortunately, Witkoff is pretty easy. It's pretty naive. So Tehran believes they'll have a better chance once Witkoff gets to Europe and sits around a bunch of people that he believes he wants to impress, and Tehran will get all they want. That is dangerous, and the Trump administration needs to do something about it. They need to remove Witkoff and put Secretary Rubio in there. This is the job for the Secretary of State, not for a businessman who doesn't understand the Middle East, who doesn't understand Russia, and who doesn't understand the art of negotiating with adversaries.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says work has begun on a 17th package on sanctions against Russia. It's expected to be presented next month. Speaking after a foreign ministers' meeting in Luxembourg, Kallas said pressure should be placed on Russia to end the violence and urged member states to deliver faster. She also said that 2/3 of the €5 billion needed to supply ammunition to Ukraine has already been secured. The ammunition plan is seen as the most achievable part of a larger €40 billion proposal. She's also called for more air defence systems after Sunday's missile strikes on Sumy, which killed more than 30 people.
We see that Russia really wants war, and all those who want the...
Russia has launched a fresh wave of strikes on the northeastern Ukrainian city of Sumy late Monday. It's just a day after a missile attack killed 35 people and injured more than 100, according to Ukrainian officials. Russia's defense ministry claims responsibility for Sunday's assault.
Lying in a hospital bed in Sumy lies 13-year-old Kirilo Ilyashenko, who is hailed as a hero by Ukraine's interior minister. It's after he saved lives during one of the deadliest missile strikes in recent months that killed 35 people and injured more than 100, according to officials. Kirilo and his mother told Ihor Klimenko they were on a crowded bus Sunday morning, heading to sports training, when a Russian ballistic missile struck near their vehicle. The explosion turned their ride into a scene of chaos and bloodshed.
It all happened so fast. The glass shattered into my face. I was covered in blood. I shouted, "Kiryusha, where are you?" We touched each other, but we couldn't see.
His mother says he forced open a damaged bus door with her help and began pulling survivors from the wreckage.
I first tried to open the door by myself, and then my mother helped me to open the door.
How many people were on the bus?
It was full. There were a lot of people.
Around 40.
Yes.
Moments after that missile struck, paramedic Artem Selyanin grabbed his medical kit and rushed to help the wounded. But on Monday, he was caught on the staircase of the residential building where he lives with his family during the second strike on Monday.
I was running from one wounded person to another. It was emotionally exhausting. And doing triage, deciding who needs help first, I was lost. I had to come back because I ran out of tourniquets. I ran out of thermal blankets. We used them to cover the dead. There were many dead and we had nothing else to use. I used every blanket in my backpack and medical kit.
The Ukrainian Air Force reported that a new wave of missiles and guided bombs hit Sumy within minutes of each other. Local authorities said there were no immediate reports of casualties. Russia's defense ministry claimed responsibility, and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov alleged that Ukrainian officials were meeting Western counterparts in the town, though no evidence was provided. The US and European leaders swiftly condemned Sunday's attack. Ukrainian officials says the renewed attacks prove Russia is not serious about peace. The United Nations estimates that more than 12,000 civilians have been killed since Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022. The latest assault on Sumy has once again drawn global attention to the human toll of a war now entering its fourth year.
Olena Urmei from Dignitas in Kyiv is joining us now live. Good afternoon, Olena. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, after the latest deadly Russian attack on Sumy in Ukraine, President Donald Trump stated that Volodymyr Zelensky shares the blame with Vladimir Putin for millions of people dead in the Ukraine war. What's your analysis here, and are you disturbed by this equivalence between the sides?
Yes, of course. I think these two words should never be in the two names should not have been in the same sentence. The solely responsible party for the strike and for the death in this war is Russia, the one who started the full-scale invasion. And I think more than one official, government official stated that it's very clear that Russia is the one who started the war in Ukraine.
And Russia's still carrying out attacks on Ukraine despite the ceasefire efforts. Will Russia be contained?
I'm pretty sure it will be. It depends on the political will, how fast it will happen. But given the fact that we have meetings at the high level and that the comprehension of the seriousness of the situation is clear, I believe they will be contained, yes.
Okay.
The question is how and when.
Okay, can I ask you to elaborate just before I let you go on the comment that that Trump made? What rationale is he following here by saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are as equally as responsible? Why would he have come to such a conclusion, do you think?
It's very hard for me to follow his logic. As I said, these two names should not have been in the same sentence to begin with. The party that started the war is responsible for the death and the death toll in this war.
Okay, all right.
It's very, please, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Just your final remarks.
Yeah, as I said, they should not have been in the same sentence. I think it's just an attempt to do the collective blame, and that's not the right approach in this case.
Okay, Olena, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, Algeria has expelled 12 French diplomats from the country, citing a breach of diplomatic norms by French authorities. It's after France arrested an Algerian consular official in Paris last week, as well as 2 other Algerian nationals. They're accused of allegedly kidnapping a social media influencer and critic of the Algerian government, Amir Boukours. He was granted asylum by France in 2023. However, Algeria has long criticised Paris for refusing to extradite him. In Iraq, a sandstorm has severely disrupted a daily life in the city of Najaf. More than 1,000 people have been reported to have breathing problems, with hospitals reporting several hundred residents were hospitalised. Visibility was significantly reduced, particularly on the roads, causing major traffic problems, and the airport had to close. The orange glow was expected to dissipate by Tuesday morning, but authorities say more bad dusty weather is set for the next few days. A 5.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded in California's San Diego County on Monday. The quake happened at a depth of 13.4 kilometres at just after 10 o'clock in the morning. Tremors were felt across San Diego as well as in Orange and Los Angeles counties. Authorities say there are no reports of injuries or damage. The USGS Shake Alert System sent out early warnings, and the National Weather Service confirmed there was no tsunami threat. The US Department of Education has officially withdrawn $2.2 billion in federal grants previously designated for Harvard University. The move comes amid growing pressure from the White House. Earlier, it had warned that federal funding could be cut for universities that fail to adequately protect Jewish students on campus. This follows a surge in anti-Israel protests at various institutions, raising concerns about student safety and discrimination. American pop artist Katy Perry and 5 other women flew to the edge of space and back on a Blue Origin rocket, completing the first all-female crewed space flight in more than 60 years.
2, 1, ignition.
For 11 minutes, US singer Katy Perry was launched into space on Monday with 5 other women.
New Shepard has cleared the tower.
The first all-female crewed space mission since 1963 travelled to the edge of space and returned safely back to Earth to West Texas. They experienced a brief period of weightlessness before re-entering the atmosphere.
That's amazing.
The flight used Blue Origin's New Shepard launch vehicle, developed by the private aerospace company founded by Jeff Bezos. The mission was part of the company's commercial space tourism program. Perry sang "What a Wonderful World" as the capsule began its return to our planet. The singer described the experience as the most meaningful of her life after motherhood, saying she hoped to set an example of courage and self-worth.
Katie!
The moment, I mean, it is the highest high, and it is surrender to the unknown. Trust, and this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training, it's the team, it's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more.
The group also included Lauren Sanchez, who is engaged to Bezos, former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bowe, scientist and activist Amanda Nguyen, film producer Kerry-Ann Flynn, and CBS host Gayle King.
It's oddly quiet when you get up there. It's really quiet and peaceful. And you look down at the planet and you think, that's where we came from? And to me, it's such a reminder about how we need to do better, be better. Do better, be better human beings.
And what do you mean by that?
Processing. Well, it's so nasty and so vitriolic nowadays. And I mean, if everybody could experience that peace that we had up there and the kindness and what it takes to do what we did, all the people that it took to get us up there and get us back safely, I'll never, ever, ever forget it.
Blue Origin has not publicly disclosed the cost of tickets for such flights. However, its website says that a $150,000 refundable deposit is required to begin the booking process.
It's history, you know, we got to.
Armenia says it's ready to sign a peace agreement with Azerbaijan and supports the simultaneous dissolution of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe Minsk Group. That's according to Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who made a speech at the parliamentary session on Tuesday. He says that if the Karabakh conflict is considered resolved, the group's format is no longer necessary. He also dismissed Azerbaijan's demand to amend Armenia's constitution, referencing a constitutional court ruling that found no territorial claims against Azerbaijan in the current text. Pashinyan says that both nations deserve peace, not continued conflict. Azerbaijan Foreign Ministry has sharply criticised recent comments by French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot about the Azerbaijan and Armenia peace process. Barrot had mentioned that the tensions had increased at the border between the two nations. However, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Aykan Hajizadeh says the remarks show double standards. He accuses France of supplying arms to Armenia. Hajizadeh also rejected French criticism of legal proceedings for the peace process, calling it interference in domestic affairs. He further accused France of pursuing a neo-colonial agenda that undermines international stability. There's been another attempt to smuggle drugs from Iran into Azerbaijan using a drone. It happened on the 6th of April. According to the State Border Service Agency, the Horadiz Frontier Unit and officers from the Ministry of Internal Affairs intercepted the unmanned aircraft. It was carrying 14 kilograms of marijuana and 40 grams of methamphetamine. There was another attempt on the 8th of April when officers recovered 4.5 kilograms of marijuana and made 2 arrests. And more on the latest developments in the region. Joining me live is Nargiz Mamadova, international expert from STEM Analytical Centre. Nargiz, thank you so much for making time to speak to us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Now, at a time when Azerbaijan and Armenia are edging towards a peace deal, 2 interesting developments took place almost simultaneously. Now, Iran and Armenia held joint military drills, and there were tensions on the border between Azerbaijan and Iran. Now, some analysts find this situation befuddling and concerning. What's happening there, actually, in your opinion?
So in my opinion, Iran understands that Azerbaijan and Armenia are very close to sign a peace agreement, and because from the messages that we get from Armenia are ready to sign the agreement and also reject and the Minsk group further activities and even further existence of Minsk group. And also I think that they will be able to change the constitution also, because it's one of the major requirements for the signing a peace agreement from Azerbaijan. Iran is kind of participating aside of all these situation, and it's actually very disturbing them. However, we understand that after signing the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, potentially the Zangezur corridor will be open, and as we know, the Zangezur actually is not the pure interest of Iran. And after the attack on the embassy of Azerbaijan in Iran, in Tehran, like 2 years ago, I guess, we see how the friendship between Azerbaijan and Iran looked actually very, I will not say fake, I will say doubtful, because we see some messages also from the regime of the Iran authorities that is very unpleasant and it's not appropriate to Azerbaijan. The military trainings that in the border between Iran and Armenia is also giving some messages to Azerbaijan that we need to be careful about our neighbors, okay? We have very high tension, geopolitical tensions and in the region right now, because after signing the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, everything will be changed. The political vision, the political perspective of the South Caucasus will be changed, and maybe this is not in the interest of Iran, because Iran, even they're not opening to the world 100% because they are under the sanctions. So they're only looking to the South Caucasus as a whole region, and they wanted to be one of the prominent leader country in the region. But however, as we remember, some couple of days ago in the Antalya Diplomatic Forum, we see three key actors in the South Caucasus geographically, and it's very obvious that is Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. Only that three countries, via cooperation, if Armenia will show their political will, in the perspective, it can be a very good platform. The South Caucasus can be a very good geopolitical background or platform for cooperation, and maybe Iran is not interesting for this. However, we also see that the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, will pay a visit to Baku, and maybe the ambassador of Iran to Azerbaijan will be changed soon.
Okay. And Nargis, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, during a parliamentary session today, stated that Armenia understands Azerbaijan's agenda concerning the dissolution of the OSCE Minsk group. He added that format dedicated to the former conflict is no longer necessary. But this is important. I guess you would agree, Nargis. He also said, and I quote, "However, the Minsk group has operated within a broader context. We want to ensure that Azerbaijan doesn't view this step as merely shifting the conflict from its own territory to Armenia." Now, many interesting nuances there. What are your thoughts on this?
You know, the problem with the Minsk group that they're acted neutral. The neutrality in the peace building, even after the peace building, where the pain of the conflict, it's still, it's very precious. It's very significant for both sides to be neutral. Before this, we understand that the Minsk group didn't give this value of neutrality to Azerbaijan, first of all, due to some, let's say, claims that is not appropriate towards Azerbaijan. And after the conflict, if countries made to the signing of the peace agreement tete-a-tete, there was many other mediators like EU, Russia, USA even, but at the very end, I will say the last year, all the negotiations were tete-a-tete. And Azerbaijani side understand that talking face-to-face with Armenia is better than talking with mediators such as Minsk group. So the agenda of Azerbaijan, the vision of Azerbaijan is a very progressive one. It's seeing the processes that were during the Second Karabakh War and before the Second Karabakh War. That's why Azerbaijan is saying that no future for the Minsk group, and Armenia should face with these realities, and the Pashinyan signals actually we should take as some positive one because they show readiness of the dissolution of the Minsk group.
Okay, Nargis Mammadova, international expert from STEM Analytical Center. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you very much.
Now, at the fourth session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent in New York, the executive director of the Baku Initiative Group, Abbas Abbasov, said many African people are not getting their basic universal rights realized. The week-long session highlights global calls for reparations for the historical legacies of enslavement and colonialism. And Abbasov said the Baku Initiative Group is consistently supporting nations fighting colonial and neo-colonial oppression. He says they're committed to providing tangible support.
Thank you very much for your attention. The right of life, liberty, equality, cultural identity and decolonization, these are not privileges. They are universal human rights enshrined in the United Nations Charter, the Bandung Principles of the Non-Alignment Movement, and in many other international documents. Yet for many African nations and people of African descent around the world, these rights remain aspirational rather than realized. For the last 2 years, our organization has been the organizer of around 30 international conferences. The above-mentioned negative impact of the legacies of colonialism is a main topic of our events, which bring together representatives and leaders of independence movements, decolonization experts, and researchers from Guadeloupe, Martinique, Bonaire, Saint Martin, Kanaki, Mahoy Nui, French Guiana, Réunion, Mayotte, Corsica, and others still suffering from the colonial policy.
Deepening economic ties and facilitating trade, that was the main aim of the International Conference of Leading Think Tanks of the Organization of Turkic States in Uzbekistan on Monday. The event in Tashkent was part of a broader push for regional economic integration.
Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan, became the center of strategic dialogue on Monday. Leading scholars, economists and policymakers from the Organization of Turkic States convened for a high-level conference themed Expanding Trade Potential Among the Countries of the OTS, Joint Research and Strategic Solutions. The event, organized by Uzbekistan's Center for Economic Research and Reforms in collaboration with the Organization of the Turkic State Secretariat, stems from an initiative proposed by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev during the 11th OTS summit in Bishkek last November. The primary goal of the conference is to enhance trade and economic cooperation among OTS countries through targeted research and actionable strategies. Discussions centered on key issues such as removing trade barriers, streamlining customs procedures, and developing digital trade platforms. The OTS Deputy Secretary-General Merey Mukasyan highlighted the bloc's substantial collective market of 175 million people and its growing global influence. He said that major steps have already been taken to foster economic unity, including the establishment of the Union of Turkish Chambers of Commerce and Industry and the Turkish Investment Fund. He also unveiled plans for a new Turan Special Economic Zone to be created in Kazakhstan's Turkestan region, seen as a key part of the strategic middle corridor. It could transform the region into a vital transport and logistics hub. Throughout the day, participants delved into a range of pressing topics, from untapped trade opportunities and digital innovation to sustainable development, regional infrastructure, and the green economy. Experts also addressed pressing socio-demographic challenges facing the Turkic world.
A major lithium mining and processing project is being launched in Kazakhstan by a German company. The total investment could reach up to $700 million, and it's of the EU's broader strategy to reduce reliance on critical raw materials from China. Fariza Karimurzina reports from Almaty.
Germany's HMS Big Bow AG, in partnership with Kazakhstan's Alatau Lithium and Create the corporation, is set to develop a major lithium mining and processing project in east part of Kazakhstan. Construction is stated to begin in 2026 at 2 key lithium deposits, part of a region that holds 7 sites, according to Kazakhstan's Ministry of Industry. The project represents an investment of up to $700 million, with $500 million already secured. Geological exploration is underway, and the companies have been granted 6-year exploration rights for 2 blocks. This marks the first time a German company has entered Kazakhstan's rare earth mining sector. HMS Bergbo holds a 51% stake in the joint venture following agreements reached during a high-level meeting with Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev last year. The project aligns with the European Union's Critical Raw Materials Act, which aims to reduce reliance on Chinese imports by 2030. In turn, Kazakhstan, home to 19 of the 34 rare earths critical to the European Union, is emerging as a key strategic partner. A recent €3 million European Union Central Asia cooperation deal underscores growing interest in the region. With global demand surging, lithium is now seen as a cornerstone of the digital and green economy, vital for electric vehicles, smartphones, and more. Fariza Kalimurzana, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Turkey started a major restoration of Hagia Sophia's Grand Mosque iconic dome, one of the most significant repairs in the monument's recent history. The nearly 1,500-year-old Byzantine structure is rich in both Christian and Islamic heritage and remains open to visitors and worshippers during the works.
Hagia Sophia Mosque, standing in the heart of Istanbul, has long been a symbol for both the Muslim and Christian worlds. As a monument that has carried the weight of centuries, Hagia Sophia is now entering a major new phase in its long-running restoration, focusing on its iconic dome. The restoration is considered one of the most significant repair efforts since previous works on the 1,488-year-old structure. Experts say restoring Hagia Sophia is a complex and unpredictable task, but modern technology may open a new chapter in its preservation.
Hagia Sophia was of course destroyed by major disasters and also went through various restorations, both in the Byzantine and Ottoman periods. Of course, we do not know the historical records of the very old ones very well, whether they were very comprehensive or not, but since it will be built in the best and most comprehensive way with the technology and methods currently used in the modern age, it probably opens an important page in the book.
Experts report that restoration work on other parts of Hagia Sophia has been ongoing for the past 10 years. The Hagia Sophia is expected to remain open to both worshippers and visitors during the restoration process, which adds complexity to the repairs. The reinforcement project will focus on structural weaknesses identified through earthquake simulations. Given the country's location along active fault lines, experts say the true condition of the structure will become clearer once the lead cover is removed. No official date has been set for the dome's completion due to potential weather and structural delays. Hagia Sophia, built as a Christian church in the 6th century under Emperor Justinian I, was converted into a mosque after the Ottoman conquest in 1453. In 1935, it became a museum under Atatürk, and in 1985, it was recognized as part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2020, it was reconverted into a mosque, while remaining open to visitors, reflecting its layered Christian and Islamic heritage.
That's the world news for the hour. Keep watching A News for more updates.